Hey guys, what's up? So you're sitting there thinking to yourself, my Volpact builds have been demolished. Um, Maybe I don't want to play some easy build where you just left click and fall asleep. So I decided to show you guys my sweet build that I like making. I've played this sweet build since closed beta. I love Sweet Marauder. It's always been my favorite, and I just keep playing it and playing it and playing it. So I thought I'd show it off for you guys. And maybe it's something you maybe want to make as a league starter. It should be good for farming currency and in-game maps. I don't know yet about killing the Shaper, the Guardians, and Ubrit Siri. Although, once we get into the new season, I'm going to try all that stuff on this build. And maybe I'll make a video of that stuff. Looking at the numbers, it looks like it's very possible that you can. Shouldn't be too much trouble. It's not going to be a cakewalk like some other builds, but I think it's still definitely possible to do in-game. Definitely can do lab and stuff very easy. So I actually already filmed this once, and my internet was so terrible that it crapped out in a map, so I'm not going to run another map again. I'm just going to kind of show you if I can even get to here. Just kind of show you how the build works a little bit before we get into everything else. And you can see I'm just lagging. I hope they fix my internet before the new patch. You can see I'm just like lagged out again. This is what happened in the map. It's just terrible. But yeah, basically it's pretty simple. Just sleep slam around and then hit some sweep everything right off your map. Usually stuff dies a lot quicker, but you know, with the lag, it's being kind of terrible right now. I don't even know like what's happening. Like, stuff is not happening. So yeah, I'll probably stop that here because this is just being terrible right now. But you can see that the build works really good. It works better when I'm not lagging so bad, obviously, which is terrible. This is crap that my internet's being so bad the day before patch, but I can't help it. Hopefully, like I said, they'll get it fixed. But the build's real simple. You just leap in the stuff, you sweep. Wow, I can't even go to hideout now. This is ridiculous. So I'll show you guys. We'll get into my gear here if we can. So I decided I usually use a maul with this build, but I've decided to use the Doomsower Sword. Doomsower Sword has 15% increased area of effect, 10% increased physical damage, has extra fire damage, and of course gives you some nice physical damage and increased attack speed, which is really good for sweep. I'm also using the Carcass Jack, which gives you more increased area damage and extra gore, which is obviously the staple of this build is gore. You can see from the microtransactions I'm using, that's what really makes the build, is the gore. And they just went my internet down again, disconnecting me. This is why I can't play hardcore. If, you know, people like, why don't you play hardcore? Well, I used to back when I had good internet, but now my internet sucks and I can't play hardcore. So then I use the Devoto's Devotion. I think this is just a great helm for movement speed. It has attack speed. It gives you dexterity, which we need. The 10% reduced physical damage is the downside of this, but everything else more than makes up for it. I do have just a turquoise amulet at the moment to give me some dex and int. Later on I'd probably go for like Duresso Salute. I am using spiked gloves with some attack speed and life. These are obviously good for any melee build. I am using just a couple 2-stone rings right now, nothing too special. I will go to steel rings later on in the game, and I'm using these 2 stone boots, which is nice, and you can see we have a lot of armor and evasion rating, which we're going to take all that evasion rating and turn it into armor once we get into the skill section. Well, the skill tree section. So at the moment, I don't have a freezing flask. I do recommend you have a cannot be frozen flask that you can hit. I got really lucky. I transmuted this one and it came up a seething flask of staunching, and then I transmuted this one, it came up as a divine flask of staunching. I hit it with an augment and it became a seething flask of staunching. Usually I have to roll a million times to try to get a seething flask or a staunching flask, either one, and this time for whatever reason I got them both instantly, so I just kept them, said the heck with it, even though I'd much rather have one of them a freeze of heat flask so that I could stop from being frozen. Then I'm using an ample granite flask of iron skin, and I'm using the lion's roar, as you can see there, before we got disconnected again. Terrible, terrible internet. This is turning into a video of just how bad my internet is instead of actually showing off this build. But yeah, we use the Lion's Roar Granite Flask, and we use the Series Promise Flask. I would recommend taking and at some point maybe putting in a Taste of Hate Flask. You could even swap that for the Lion's Roar. The Lion's Roar is nice. A lot of people just don't like the knockback that it gives. I'm one of those, but in this build I really like the knockback because I use this more as like a save your butt flask, you know what I mean? Instead of just more damage, although it does help with bosses giving you more damage. I use this just to knock stuff back if stuff's starting to hurt a little bit, so I can leap the heck out of there a little safer. Because everybody knows as part of sweep, the most efficient way to use sweep is to jump straight in the middle of everything. You take basically as many monsters as you can find and you just leap right in the middle of them, and you do a decent AoE, like literally almost a full screen once I get my sweep up. Like I said, I've played sweep for lots of years. Once you get your sweep up to 20% quality, it gives you even more area of effect, and you can pretty much hit about the whole screen with your sweep, which is really, really nice. So yeah, you leap in right in the middle of everything and you just sweep, 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 and you don't worry about life because everything dies. It's a great build. It's fun. Really fun to play. It is super dangerous. I wouldn't play this in hardcore unless you know what you're doing. I used to play it in hardcore all the time, and yes, I lost some characters with it. Well, that's fine if my internet wants to be crappy, because I'm going to show you the skill tree next. Actually, before I show you the skill tree, I'll show you what all gems I have linked with sweep, if we can stay logged in long enough for me to show you all the skills that I have. So we have sweep, we have faster attacks, we have increased area of effect, we have melee physical damage, and we have multi-strike. I would put added fire. I do have an added fire leveling up. It's not going to let me because my internet's crashing again, it feels like. I have added fire damage leveling up. I was also trying out maim. Maim wasn't as good, but added fire damage will be good in the 6th link. And then we have leap slam with faster attacks, fortify, and endurance charge on melee stun. That way when you leap in, you stun everything, which gives you endurance charges, so you instantly have endurance charges. You don't have to worry about hitting Enduring Cry or using it on your cast when damage taken. I do have cast when damage taken, Enduring Cry, Immortal Call, and then I have Summon Flame Golem. You can get a lower level Flame Golem and have it on your cast on damage taken as well, but right now I'm just casting it. Honestly, it doesn't give you that much more damage. I don't like using golems all that much anyway, so I just never bring mine out hardly. So then I have my Ancestral Protector, and I got some melee physical damage support, and I have Calling Strike. So that way it helps with bosses. I throw this up on a boss. He does added damage to the boss while I'm moving around. You know, if the boss is throwing something at you that really hurts, your totem will still sit there doing damage to the boss. And when it gets down to low health, it'll just delete the boss because of Calling Strike, which is really nice. Then I have Blasphemy and Warlord's Mark. That's my Aurora. Later on, I'm going to probably use 2 of those. I've been thinking about dropping Herald of Ash, maybe, and using Vulnerability and Punishment, or possibly Warlord's Mark as well. Warlord's Mark is nice because it gives you endurance charges, and it also gives you life and mana leech, which just helps out a little bit. And then I'm using Vengeance, and I'm using, of course, Herald of Ash, and I just have Fortify thrown in there and Calling Strike thrown in there. My Vengeance does get Calling Strike. Vengeance, basically, whenever you get hit, you have a 30% chance to trigger the skill, and that does have Calling Strike with it, so when you're in a big group, if you get hit, you could just kill a bunch of guys from your Vengeance. You don't really need this. What I would do is later on move out your Ancestral Protector and your Blasphemy and Warlord's Mark. Move it up to here if you're going with a Comb's Heart. We'll talk about that more later because I do have another setup for this that I think might be a little better. So yeah, that's the basic gym setup that I have. So we'll go to the skill tree. And I also do have some in-game equipment here. I guess I'll show you this real quick. The Dresser's Salute. I've got steel rings, nice crafted rustic sash. And the other setup I'll show you is the Comb's Heart and the Curry Maul. I think these might be a little better. You won't get as much area of effect, but you know, especially for hardcore, it might be a little better damage going this way, or a little better survivability. You could also use the Abyss's Helmet if you really want to die. It does give a ton of nice damage, but the increased physical damage taken kind of hurts a little bit, especially on a build where you're getting surrounded by a bunch of melee. Still the same thing, just the 2-tone boots with tons of armor and evasion rating. And the reason why evasion rating is nice, armor evasion rating, is because of what we selected in the skill tree. We do run Iron Reflexes, converts all evasion rating to armor. So yeah, that's how we have tons of armor. In this mock-up build I made, or gear I should say, some top gear, you can see we have 15,575 armor. On my character I currently have 10,000 plus armor. So you have a ton of armor with this build, but you don't have evasion rating, and that's why I have Unwavering Stance, cannot be stunned. Now I am playing this as a Juggernaut, and you may ask, well, why don't you take Unbreakable? The reason is, with this build I'm wearing an evasion chest piece, and the evasion does not double, only armor does. Even though the evasion rating is technically turning into armor, that's not how it works, because the chest itself technically isn't giving you armor, it's your evasion rating that's giving you the armor. It's weird how it works. I thought it should work, but it doesn't. So instead I take the Unstoppable, just some increased movement speed. If you early game, if you have like a Glorious Plate that's like 900 plus or 1,000 armor, you might want to just go ahead and grab this. You can always respec out of it later, you know. But yeah, this is a pretty good skill early game to just kind of double your armor rating, give you a little bit of help. We do take Unyielding, which just gives you more damage while you have Fortify, because you're leaping in with that Fortify. You pretty much have Fortify on the whole time, because that's basically all you do. You leap, you sweep, you leap, you sweep, you leap, you sweep. So then we grab Unafflicting, just an extra endurance charge, and a chance to gain endurance charge when you're hit. Just more endurance charges, more defense, offense. Endurance charges are great for this build. And then we got a little extra damage, reduced elemental damage, and chance that if you would gain endurance charges, you instead gain up to your maximum number of endurance charges, which is great. So we could just instantly gain our max endurance charges from that node. I really like Juggernaut. It's kind of a break from the Berserker style play. I've always liked Juggernaut just because it's Juggernaut. I mean, so starting out this build, starting out Marauder, I will have a little bit later. I'll show you how to make this into a Duelist. But like I said, I love Marauder, so that's what we're going with. And this, by the way, is the new skill tree. I won't be able to, or I will post the skill tree, but it's not going to be quite the same because this is the brand new skill tree that's coming out with 3.1. You can see Volpact is down here. So that will not be here if you click on this. So note that until 3.1 comes out, the skill tree won't be 100% correct if you open it up. If you open my link, but after 3.1 comes out, it should be just fine. So first thing you want to do when you start out as Marauder, you want to run straight to Resolute Technique. Just come right straight across and bam, Resolute Technique. You want Resolute Technique as fast as you can. That way you don't have to worry about accuracy whatsoever. You just hit everything all the time, which is great. After that, you want to start making your way down. Now I do have the sword nodes right here, but you don't want to grab these until in game unless you just happen to have some amazing swords laying around that maybe you're not playing this at the start of the league, maybe you're playing it a little ways through and you happen to have some swords light out like Ringval's Charge or something like that. You don't want to grab this right away. You want to focus on a lot of the two-handers. Like you see, this is just bam, two-hand damage. If you need more damage, that's what you want to focus on. Right here you get some nice two-hand damage. So as long as you're using two-handers, just keep popping in the two-hand damage and don't worry about focusing on a certain type, right? Especially if you're starting out the new league, you can't always just find a good sword. You may find a really good mace and say, hey, I want to use this mace. So stay away from the weapon-specific nodes for a little bit. You can, a lot of times what I do is I will just shoot straight down and get iron reflexes as soon as possible. You don't have to, but that's what I like to do. It's still good having some evasion and stuff depending on what gear you're finding early game, but I still like to rush down. What I do is I come up through here because unwavering stance is huge. You cannot invade enemy attacks, but you can't be stunned. Well, since we're taking iron reflexes, we have no evasion rating anyway, so we might as well take this so we can't be stunned. So I like to come up through this life node. This life node, by the way, I think is amazing. Enemies cannot leech life from you. I come up through here, and I get right before unwavering stance. I don't take it yet. I just get to the node before it. And then I come down through straight over and get to the node before this, before iron reflexes. And then I save up 2 skill points, whether it be a couple skill books or a skill book and a level. And I'll hit iron reflexes and unwavering stance at the exact same time. Then after that, at any point in time, you can grab extra life. You can grab extra damage, whatever you need, whatever you're lacking at the time when you're leveling up, that's what you want to take. You want to take either damage or life. But you want to try to start working your way up after that to amplify damage. Amplify damage gives you increased area of effect and increased area damage. Once you get this here, you'll be hitting a lot larger area. Like I said, at any time you can come over and get life. By the time you get up here, you'll be starting at the end game, and then you can just start filling out whatever you need. Life, if you've got your nice sword, you can start filling in sword. If you don't have the sword, if you go the mace, you can just fill in these mace nodes right here. There's mace nodes somewhere right here. You can put in these mace nodes. These two-handed damage nodes, you could also put these in. These are very good two-handed. If you don't want to come up through the Duelist up here, which I really like these skills, you could put in these two-handed damage if you need a lot more damage. You can also get rid of Volpact altogether. This is something, of course, I haven't tried yet, so I can't recommend getting Volpact, but I am going to try it out. When I run this build, this ladder, I'm going to try out Volpact. What I would recommend, you can grab this as a life and mana leech node. I would grab this probably very soon, and probably right after you get to Iron Reflexes, or even before you get Iron Reflexes if you're running, having a little trouble with your mana leech. You can grab this, and you can just stay here. You can grab Vitality Void if you really want to, but you don't have to push the Volpact super quick. That's more of a later game thing when you have some more fleshed out gear. If you're a newer player, I would recommend dropping Volpact altogether until it's been tested, or just if you don't think you can deal with the life regen has no effect. A lot of newer players don't know what the heck to do with that, so you can just drop Volpact altogether. So that's the build. I'll put the link in the description. Like I said, it's not going to actually be this build. I think I looked at it, and I think the only thing that was missing was this Volpact node, so you should be okay. And this is for level 95. Of course, for bandits, you want to kill all of them. Kill all the bandits. The +2 skill points is way better than anything you get off of them for most builds. And yeah, next thing is, I think there's a build actually for going sweep in Duelist. I'll give some love to that build in the description below in case you guys want to run Duelist. Duelist may be better for this build. I just really like running Marauder. That's why I'm going to run it as Marauder. But if you run it as a Slayer, Slayer is amazing. So you're going to gain Onslaught. Killing enemies that have 20% or lower life will just die, which is basically Calling Strike on everything, which is amazing. Then you have Headsman, which is kind of weird. This has the reduced reflected physical damage. I guess it's still going to work in maps, I guess, that are Phys Reflect. So, but then you have 20% more damage if you've killed recently, and you have 15% increased area effect if you've killed recently, which is great for our build because that's what we're focusing on as AoE. Then you have Endless Hunger, 20% of overkill damage leached as life, and life leech effects are not removed at full life. So basically what life leech does is when you leech to full, life leech ends. With this node, all those effects stay, so like your 20% damage while you're leeching is still going to stay. And then you take Brutal Fervor, 100% increased life leech per second, cannot be stunned while leeching. That will let you get rid of the cannot be stunned node once you get into this, and you are immune to bleeding while leeching. So once you get, I recommend taking Brutal Fervor last if you're going Slayer, and at that point you could get rid of Unwavering Stance, as you won't really need it because you'll be leeching life all the time, so you won't need it. For what I recommend for the Slayer tree, or for the Duelist tree, is just come right down, grab this little node here, and then you can pretty much continue the whole tree as it is after you grab this first little patch, and then just get rid of this little bit right at the Marauder start. So basically you're just switching out a Marauder start for a Slayer start, or a Duelist start. And I will try to find that build. I'll see if the build is close to mine. I always like looking at other builds to see if they're close to how I would run stuff. So I'll check the Duelist build. I think it was called Sweep or Die, if I'm not mistaken. It was the only sweep build I could find. And I didn't really look at it too hard. But I think I did look at the gear, and it was using the same gear that I was using, which, no surprise there. For sweep, adding increased area of effect is really good. And really fun as well. Like, you literally just hit the whole screen. So I'll give you a link to that build as well, and as well a link to my build. I just want to get people playing sweep again. It's something, like I said, that I've been playing since closed beta. Literally every time I play every league, I make a sweeper. Even if I don't get it up to level, I still play it a little bit because sweeping is just my favorite thing to do in the game, and Marauder is one of my favorite classes for doing it. Although I may try, maybe I'll make maybe sometime this season, once I'm done making my couple builds that I want to get to level 100, maybe I'll make a Marauder and a Duelist and kind of compare and contrast them. I'm sure that the Duelist with the Slayer, because Slayer is so OP, would probably be better. But I'm going to still promote this as a Marauder build because I love Marauder. I think Slayer could probably definitely do in-game stuff a lot better, but I'm still thinking that I could probably kill Shaper and Guardians and everything with this. It just might be a little harder and maybe not recommended for hardcore. But I'll give it a go, especially if my internet gets fixed. Anyway, guys, leave your comments in the description, how you feel about the build, any builds you may want to see coming up, any content you may want to see coming up. And I do pretty good at reading those comments. Let me know if there's anything I could do better. And I will see you guys next time. Be sure to like and subscribe.